Hello, Professor Backus here. I apologize for the lighting. This is the best I can do right now. I thought I'd make a video about intervals. That's our topic this week. Oh, by the way, welcome back from spring break. I hope you had a good one. But I thought I would make a video about intervals because in the past it's been a confusing topic for many students. But there are other videos, and if you learn from those, that's great. Otherwise, I'm going to make three. I'm going to make one about basic interval information, and then step up our level of understanding of intervals just a little bit. And then I'm going to take us to the piano, which is right over there, um, and uh, and show you what it looks like on a keyboard. Okay, so bear with me. Let's get the vocabulary first, and then you could skip to the third one for the piano. That might be okay, and then come and do um, the one with a little bit more information in it. Okay, so just so this video can be shorter rather than longer, let's get right into it. So, what is an interval? An interval is a distance between any two pitches, and we have labels for that. And that's what we're learning this week. What are the labels for it? And then, if you really want to, distance between two pitches, let me get that going. Distance between two pitches, right? So that's what we're measuring. Let's put a capital D there just for fun. Distance between two pitches. And if you want to be good at music, you should understand this. You should be able to hear the difference and ultimately learn how to identify these intervals by ear. And so if you play an instrument or you go to the keyboard, go get the sound and figure them out in your ears. And then you can go to musictheory.net and actually practice hearing them, which is not what you have to do for this class. There are some assignments where you go to musictheory.net and identify them on paper, which is the main topic for the week. Okay? So intervals are any distance between two pitches, and let's get some labels for them. Okay, so first we want to talk about what are called generic interval labels. Okay? And those are derived from the number of letter names involved. And we always start with whatever the lower note is. In this case, hopefully you know already, that's an E. I'm sorry for the lighting, I hope you can see that. That's an E. And then if I go just one note up to F, right, there's two letters involved. And so we're going to call that a second. Okay? And so I'm going to count lines and spaces to figure this out. So 1, 2. That's a second. And then I could go E up to G. It could be G flat. It could be up to G. But our generic letters or labels will be 1, 2, 3. So that is some sort of third. And let me do a larger one just as an example. Let's go E up to E. That's a distance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And instead of calling it an eighth, we call it an octave. Okay? Everything else is a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And then we don't say eighth, we say octave. So E up to E, the same note, those are an octave. And if I go play them, you'll see that they sound similar, but they sound the same except one is higher. Uh, but they sound like the same note. It's identifiable. Okay, so that is how we generate the generic interval. And then we want to know, and you have a whole assignment based on just generic intervals, or at least a big chunk of it is. And then you also are going to want to know for that assignment the difference between melodic intervals and harmonic intervals. And these are labels your assignment's going to ask you to put on several different intervals. So, but simply put, the melodic interval is if I play one after another. So I play one, do, so, da, da, right? That's melodic. One happens after the other. And I can't sing a chord for you, but if two notes happen at the same time, then that's called harmonic. Okay? So melodic versus harmonic. And I'm just going to put, just to keep track of what we've talked about here, M for melodic versus H for harmonic. Okay? Oh, you can't see that with the glare. I am sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So the problem with generic intervals, and in many contexts in music theory, when I'm talking and teaching to my classes, using the generic interval label is fine. It's totally fine, and sometimes we have to. So you want to know that. But then sometimes we need to drill down and be more specific because C to D flat and C to D are both seconds. And so we need a qualifier, and conveniently enough, that is called quality. We need a qualifier that is the quality, and qualities labels are major, minor, and perfect. And there's two more, but we'll get to those in a second. Let's just stick with major, minor, and perfect intervals, okay? So what we have is a half step here and a whole step here. The smaller of the 2 seconds is going to get a minor label, and we're going to mark that with a lowercase m. And then the larger of the 2 intervals, don't carry this flat through. I know some of you read music in a measure. I put this flat here. That means this note is affected, but that is not what's happening here. So ignore that. So the smaller of the 2 intervals is minor. The larger of the 2 would be major. And please make sure that Colton, our grader, or I, if I'm grading, sometimes I do, can tell the difference between your lowercase m. If you want, you can put a little line above your lowercase m, and then make sure your capital M for major is as big as the number you write, and then we can tell the difference. Okay? Otherwise, we have to mark it wrong, because if we don't know if you know, then it's wrong. Okay. So this is the quality, and you're going to see I'm going to fill out a chart here. This is the quality, and then down here below the quality, I'm going to put the number of half steps that you would count on the keyboard. Now, before we do that, I want to stress and emphasize that when we get the generic interval, we actually count the letter we start from. Okay, don't forget that. It's important. We count the letter we start from when we're doing a generic interval. But if I'm counting the number of half steps, I'm only counting the movement. So I can't count the first note, or it's going to mess you up. Okay, so don't count the first note. So from C to D flat, that is 1 half step. To get from C to D, I got to go C, D flat, or C sharp, the enharmonic spelling, C, D flat, then D. So there's 1, 2 moves, and so that means this is 2 half steps. 2 half steps. Okay, so then C to E flat, D going up to E flat, that's the next letter. So the top notes of these are going to slowly climb up by half steps and create larger and larger distances from our C. So here's this one. We know it's a third because we go C, D to E flat. Okay, that's a third. So, but it's the smaller of the 2 thirds, so we're going to call it a minor third. That's 3 half steps. And then C to E, C is a major third, and that's 4 half steps. I hope the procedure is making sense. And so, all right, and so then here's a weird one. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's some sort of fourth, but there are no major or minor fourths. That is not a thing. No major or minor fourths. So if we go 5 half steps, what we have is called a perfect fourth, right? We had perfect as one of our qualifiers. So this is our first perfect interval. And there's historical and music theory reasons for that, but we're not worried about any of that right now. We're just worried about what to call it. Okay, and then we can go 6 half steps, C up to F sharp, but then remember inharmonic spellings, C up to G flat, those are the same notes. Remember, F sharp and G flat are the same notes. They're just two different labels, inharmonic spelling. So this is a tricky one. And the only way to know what it is to spell it on the page. So if I spell it, C up to E, F sharp, excuse me, is 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to be some sort of fourth, but it's one bigger than the perfect fourth. You follow me? Okay. And so anything that we make bigger, we augment. And so let me add that to our, it would be up here, but I don't want to run out of room. So augmented interval. And this is the only augmented interval we are going to deal with this semester. Even though there could be more, and we're not going to worry about that. Okay? And so to get the next one, let me skip ahead and go C up to G natural. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a fifth. And there are no major or minor fifths either. Okay? Only perfect fifths, at least for now, until we get to this other, back up to this interval. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is spelled as some sort of fifth, right? It's one smaller than the perfect fifth, and we're going to call that diminished. Okay? And we make that a little d with a 5. So augmented is always a capital A, and diminished is always a little d. That's just convention. Okay, so that's the most confusing thing in the whole system. So if you can get this, you get the whole thing. So at 5 half steps, we have a perfect fourth. Then we have this weird one with 6 half steps. I can spell it 2 different ways. I can spell it as a fourth. Okay, E up to F sharp is 6 half steps if you go on the piano and count. Okay, and then, but I can also spell that F sharp as a D flat. So on the page, it looks like a fifth. And then we have to give it these labels of augmented fourth because it's one bigger than a fourth, or diminished fifth because it's one smaller than a fifth. And then it has this fancy name. If I just play it, you wouldn't know what it is because it's not spelled out on the page. And I'm going to abbreviate, but that is called a tritone. And maybe some of you have heard of tritones, and back in the day they were alleged to be the devil's interval and were banned, even though that story is not really true. But just to keep that metaphor going, if you're familiar with 666 being the devil's interval, or diabolus in musica is what it says in Latin, then you can remember 6 half steps is this crazy interval called either a diminished fifth or an augmented fourth, depending on how we spell it. Clear as mud? Okay, so the best thing to do is just go to a piano and work this out and figure it out for yourself. Otherwise, email me and we can meet and talk about it. I'm going to move on from it now. So we have our perfect fifth, which is 7 half steps. So I can do a sixth. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is some sort of sixth. Okay, and that is a minor sixth. I'm sorry, G up to A flat is a minor sixth. I almost messed that up, but I caught it. So that is 8 half steps. So sixths do have 2 different qualities we can have. And so if I go from C up to A natural, that's a major sixth. And then similarly, just moving on here, trying to keep this video short, C up to B flat. Oh, this is 9 half steps, pardon me. Major sixths have 9 half steps. And then minor sevenths have 10 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a seventh of some sort. It's the smaller of the two sevenths, so it's minor. And then C up to B natural, that's 11 half steps, and that's a major seventh. And then if we go C up to C, that is a perfect octave, and that is 12 half steps. Ooh, I'm just on my screen there. Okay. So, quick castle review. We have generic intervals, which we can just count lines and spaces, always starting with the lower note. You have to start there or it will mess you up. So we can get seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, and octaves. And then when it comes to seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, then we need to differentiate those with major and minor. And then finally, we have the weird one here, which is 6 half steps, one larger half step than a perfect fourth. And if we spell it that way, that makes it an augmented fourth. And then perfect fifths are 7 half steps. But if we spell a smaller fifth, 1 half step smaller to 6 half steps, then we would call that a diminished fifth. I know I'm sort of repetitive, but I'm just trying to get it in your skulls. Okay? So this is a chart that I believe I have you draw out, and this is what it is supposed to look like. So you're just going to copy this, essentially. So C to D flat, you'll call that a minor second. It has 1 half step. C to D, major second, 2 half steps, and so on through the rest. Okay? So that is the basic interval stuff. If you have questions, email me. You can go to the other videos. Maybe the way they explain it will resonate with you better. That's fine. And I will see you in the next one.